Today, Montenegro officials announced Terraform Labs founder Do Kwon has been arrested. The SEC puts Coinbase on notice that potential securities charges are coming. And James Lavish of the Bitcoin Opportunity Fund weighs in on what's next for crypto markets as the Fed hints that a shift in monetary policy is coming. Welcome to CNBC's Crypto World. I'm Mackenzie Sigalos. Crypto markets stabilized this morning now that investors have had some time to digest the latest policy decision from the Fed. The central bank just hiked interest rates by another 0.25 percentage point, a move that was widely expected. At the same time, though, the central bank indicated that those hikes are nearing an end. As of noon Eastern, Bitcoin traded above the $28,000 level, Ether was above $1,800, and Polygon also climbed higher, trading at $1.15. Okay, let's talk about the top stories, and we have to start with breaking news. A man who's suspected of being Terraform Labs co-founder Do Kwon has been arrested in Montenegro. The nation's interior minister announced the arrest today through a Twitter account. The tweets noted that authorities were awaiting official confirmation of the identity of a man who was arrested at the airport in the capital with false documents. South Korean officials also told Reuters they were waiting on fingerprint identification to verify that the man is in fact Do Kwon. The Terraform Labs founder is wanted in South Korea in connection with a $40 billion crash of the firm's cryptocurrency that ravaged retail investors around the world. In September, South Korea asked Interpol to circulate a red notice for Kwon, who, along with 5 other people connected to Terraform, are wanted because of allegations of fraud and financial crimes in relation to the implosion of its digital currencies in May. Next, the SEC just hit Coinbase with a Wells notice, warning the crypto exchange that it might have violated U.S. securities law. Brian Armstrong, the exchange's CEO, took to Twitter yesterday, noting that a Wells notice is usually one of the final steps before the SEC issues charges. Coinbase shares fell more than 12% this morning on the news. Now, the SEC has ramped up its enforcement of the digital asset industry. This is the second warning from the agency to a crypto entity after a February notice to stablecoin issuer Paxos. In a series of tweets yesterday, Coinbase's chief legal officer, Paul Gural, wrote that after years of asking for reasonable crypto rules, we're disappointed that the SEC is considering courts over constructive dialogue. Gural actually spoke with CNBC today about the notice. Here's what he said.
None of the assets that we list on Coinbase are securities because we apply these 4 factors that the Supreme Court gave us in the late 1940s, interpreting a law passed by Congress in the 1930s. There are other assets that may be securities. We would like in the future to be able to offer them, but unfortunately we have no path to do so. We're going to continue to invest in the United States. We're going to continue to fight for reasonable rules from the SEC and others that allow this industry to flourish here in the United States. But we cannot ignore what's happening outside the United States, and I think it would be a big mistake for this country to assume and presume that innovation will continue to be first and foremost an American priority.
We reached out to the SEC, but the agency declined to comment. Next, sticking with the SEC, the agency just unveiled charges against Tron founder and diplomat Justin Sun for fraud and securities violations. The SEC also charged celebrity backers of Sun's Tronix and BitTorrent crypto assets. Those celebrities include Jake Paul and Lindsay Lohan, among others. The charges deal with Sun's alleged trade manipulation of the 2 crypto tokens and celebrity endorsements that did not disclose compensation. The violations have nearly all been settled without admittance or denial of wrongdoing. All right, let's turn to markets for our main story. Crypto World's Tanea McKeel spoke to James Lavish, managing partner at the Bitcoin Opportunity Fund. He explains what's next for the crypto market after the Fed's decision to raise rates by 25 basis points.
What are you looking at when you look at the price action this morning and look back on, it's not Friday yet, but looking back on the week, where is Bitcoin right now in terms of how do you value it and what is driving the prices at this moment in time?
People were anticipating a 50 basis point hike. And then with all that happened in the banks, the anticipation was that at most the Fed would raise 25 basis points. And then there was a little bit of hope. I heard some hopium on Twitter about maybe the Fed will pause or lower rate. And I think that was pretty unreasonable considering the strong language that Powell has had for months and months now about tackling inflation. So But yesterday in the meeting, you could see the markets rallying off of his statements. They raised 25 basis points, fully expected. And then in the press release itself, Powell adjusted the language, right? So he was saying that they anticipate ongoing increases in the target range with some additional policy and firming may be appropriate. And then in the press conference afterwards, he told a reporter, I can't remember who asked it, but he said, I would be focusing on the words some and may, not ongoing and additional. And that was pretty key insight to what they're thinking. But going back to Bitcoin, and the reaction is over the weekend, you could see Bitcoin rise in price. And I think that some of it was short covering and some of it was just enthusiasm and hope that the Fed may pause. But the reality is Bitcoin's kind of straddling between these being the leading risk on asset and then a financial lifeboat for the event of like an all-out banking crisis. So it's kind of benefited from both the recent turmoil and now the prospect that the Fed tightening might be over.
How do the catalysts that drive the price of Bitcoin, how do those align, I guess, with how you or any investor values Bitcoin? I mean, can it be a financial lifeboat and a hedge against uncertainty and sort of this long-term thing, but still in the short term be driven by the macro, right, and the Fed and the inflation data?
Yeah, the Fed and the Treasury stepping in to backstop the banks, it led investors to speculate that they're cornered now, right? And so the risk on asset, meaning, and Bitcoin is still, I wish it wasn't. And, I wish that we had widespread, deeper fundamental understanding of Bitcoin as a separate asset from all other cryptocurrencies, but we don't yet. And it won't be seen that way until there's a broader understanding of it. And there won't be a broader understanding of it until there's clear regulation around it. And so all of this confusion about other cryptocurrencies and whether they're a security or whether they're a commodity, that's confusing people, and they don't see how Bitcoin is actually different with this truly decentralized protocol. So, but so while it's shining a spotlight on those problems in fractional banking, the certainty that people that people have that their money is safe in the bank is it's kind of melting. And so there are some people who are putting some capital into Bitcoin just to say, even if it's volatile, they know that at least it's there. The vast majority of investors, the hedge funds, the large institutions, what they're focused on, if they're trading Bitcoin, if they're investing in it, they're focusing on M2 expansion, the money supply. And so they're watching the Fed and they're treating this like one of the FANG stocks. It's just reality. And that's where we are right now. But I believe at some point, Bitcoin does, become uncorrelated to the rest of that technology kind of group that I'm talking about. And it becomes a hedge of the money printing, but also becomes that store of value asset that's completely separate.
What's driving ETH prices now? Is it just following Bitcoin, or is it still kind of doing its own thing?
Well, I mean, if you look back on the history of cryptocurrencies, they all have a beta to Bitcoin, right? So Bitcoin's kind of the ballast. It's the old guy, right? So it's the original cryptocurrency, and so but they're all trading off of Bitcoin in a higher beta. Right. And they all have different betas depending on their risk profiles. But ETH in particular, I think, is sensitive to not just it's closer beta to Bitcoin, but I think it's more sensitive to the regulatory environment and everything that's going on with whether or not this is going to be deemed, any asset is going to be deemed as a security rather than a store of value. And ETH in particular is kind of caught in that fight. Now, I don't own ETH and I don't follow it particularly myself. I'm focused on Bitcoin, but I do think that even if it does get deemed a security, that's going to help institutional investors understand it better. And so that will probably help both the adoption of Bitcoin and ETH, because they'll be able to get their heads around it and understand it better. And that's what we need. We need better understanding. There's a lot of confusion out there. And so, that's why people like me are out there trying to educate others, and so they can understand what this is really all about.
Okay, that's all for Crypto World today, but we will be back again tomorrow, so we'll see you then.